These are the solutions for the study guide for Chapter 1, Section 3, and Chapter 1, Section 4. Let's take a look at our first problem here. So on this one, what we want to do is solve the equation and see if the answer makes sense. So I'm going to move the r terms to one side of the equal sign. I'm going to subtract them. And as soon as I do that, I see that something happens. All the r's canceled out on the right-hand side, all the r's canceled out on the left-hand side. And what I'm left with is two numbers that do not equal. So since they do not equal each other, that means we have no solution. And that's what our answer is in this case. There's no possible number I can put in for r that will make this an equality. So on this next one, they're saying the formula for the volume V of a cone is, and then this is the formula, solve for the height, h. And so we're trying to get h by itself. So here's my equation. And my first step is to get rid of this fraction. So I'm going to multiply this entire equation by 3. But what I do to one side, I have to do the same to the other. And what happens here is the 1/3 will cancel out as I multiply by 3, and I'm left just with pi r squared h. And then on the other side of the equal sign, I have 3v. So now I'm going to divide by pi r squared on both sides. And so what I'm left with is 3v all over pi r squared equals h. And that's my answer. On this next one, it says Ace Painting charges $250 plus $16 per hour. Ted's Painting charges $210 and $18 every hour. Will the two companies ever charge the same? So that's what they're asking. So let's do this. Let's say what the charge is, or what the unknown is. And what we don't know is how many hours it will take. So until they charge the same. So h equals the number of hours. And so what I'm going to do is set up two equations. I'm going to set Ace equal to Ted's. Now the reason I'm doing that is because we want to find out, will they charge the same? The same tells me I need to use an equal sign. So Ace Painting charges $250 and $16 each hour, where Ted, he charges $210 and $18 each hour. So from this point, I'm going to go ahead and solve by doing some opposite operations. I'm going to isolate the variable on one side of the equal sign. So taking away Ted's initial charge from Ace, we're left with $40. And now I'm going to subtract the rates. I'm going to subtract Ace's hourly charge from Ted's hourly charge, and it leaves us with $2 an hour. So it's going to take, when I do the division here, divide by those $2 an hour, and find the difference of their initial charges, $40, it's going to take 20 hours for them to charge the same amount. So after 20 hours, we can say, write a little sentence here, after 20 hours, the two companies charge the same. Moving on to the next type of problem here, and it says that we're going to solve this equation. So the way we're going to do it is we're going to distribute the 1/4 over both the terms inside the parentheses. And when I do that with this first one, I get 1/4 n, but then 1/4 times 6, I'm left with 6/4. And so I can reduce that fraction right here, and as I do this, I'm going to go ahead and do an extra step in here. I'm going to subtract this 1/4 n from both sides. And you see how they cancel out. Both the n's cancel out on both sides. And when I go ahead and reduce this fraction, I'm going to take out a common factor of 2. I'm left with -3/2. And on this side, I have the same thing, -3/2. What we have here is called an identity. And so when we have an identity and we're trying to solve for the variable for what it is, that would mean that we can have infinitely many solutions. And so that's what our answer is, compared to that first one where we had no solution. Well, here we have an identity, so we have infinitely many solutions. Looking at this next problem, we're supposed to solve this formula for the height. And then it asks us to substitute some numbers in. It says, what is the height if the area is 600 square feet, length of the smaller base is 10, length of the larger base is 20. So let's solve for the height first. So the first step I'm going to end up doing is getting rid of the fraction. I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 2. And so it leaves me with 2a equals, now the fraction cancels out, so I've got h times b plus b. And so I can go ahead and divide by that small b plus the uppercase b. And when I do that, they'll cancel each other out. And since it's being multiplied by h, that's how I can go ahead and do the division. So I'm left with double the area divided by the sum of the two bases equals the height. So now I'll go ahead and substitute my numbers in there. 600 is the area. That goes in place of a. So 2 times 600 over lowercase b, 10 feet, plus uppercase b, 20 feet, equals the height. So now I have 1200 all over 30. And when I do that division, cross off these two zeros here. 3 into 12 goes 4 times with the 0 I have left over. So 40 feet is the height. And this was the equation solved for. So on this one they're asking us to solve for y. So I first need to subtract the 3x from both sides. So I'm left with 8 minus 3x equals 6y. Now I'm going to divide by 6. Now the important thing is divide each of the terms by 6. Reduce this fraction, take out the common factor of 2 here, leaves us with 4/3 minus, and then here I'll take out a common factor of 3. And I'm left with x over 2 equals y. This is one way to write it. You could also write the problem y equals negative 1/2 x plus 4/3. And all I did is I moved it around, moved the y to the other side, kept the signs the same in front of the terms, just rewrote this as a fraction. Some people might have it this way, negative x over 2 plus 4/3. Those are different ways we could have that. So any of these answers would do. Let's take a look at our last 3 problems. On this one, this first one here, we're going to solve this equation. So I'm going to use the distributive property, multiply 4 over the subtraction. So I'm left with 8g minus 12 equals 5g minus 10. So I'll go ahead and do some opposite operations. I'll add the 12 to both sides. I'm left with 8g equals 5g minus or plus 2, positive 2 because we have more positives than negatives. So my next step is to subtract the 5g from both sides, and that cancels out. That makes a 0 here. So I'll do the same thing over here, subtract the 5g, but this time I don't get 0, I get 3g equals 2. So from this point, I'll go ahead and divide by 3, and I've got my answer. G equals 2/3. Some people might have 0.6 repeated, 0.6 repeated that is. And this next problem here, we're supposed to find the value of x. And so I'm going to take each of the angles here, 1.3x, the 2.4x. Notice I'm lining up the decimals as I do this. I have 1x plus 18, so that's 1.0x. I have 2x, so I'm going to write 2.0x. Let me fix that. So 2.0x. And I have the 1.0x plus 60. So I lined up the decimals. Even though this didn't have a 2.0x, I wrote that in there so I don't make the error of adding a ones place to a tenths place. So I'll add this stuff up. I get 0.7. Here I get 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7.7x plus 78 equals the sum total of all the angles, the 540. So now I'll go ahead and do some opposite operations. I'll subtract the 78 from both sides. So I still have this 7.7x, and now it equals 462. Well, doing that division, dividing by 7 and 7/10 on both sides, gives me x equals 60. So that is the answer there, 60 degrees, since we're dealing in degrees. Then we can go ahead and substitute. We can do 2 times 60, it makes 120 degrees. We can do 60 plus 18 gives me 78 degrees. And then 2.4 times by 60 gives me 144 degrees. And then 1.3 times 60 gives me 78 degrees. And then this one is 60 and 60. added together makes 120 degrees. So on this last one, it says the temperature conversion from Celsius to Fahrenheit is this. Solve for F. So to get F by itself, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, 9/5. So I'm left with 9/5 C equals F minus 32. No parentheses anymore because I multiplied by the reciprocal to cancel out the 9s and the 5s. So from there, I'll go ahead and add 32 to both sides, and I'm left with 9/5 C plus 32 equals F. So now this is the equation I'm going to use to go ahead and find out what is the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit for 25 degrees Celsius. So this is part of the answer. Now I'll go ahead and substitute 9/5 times by 25 over 1. I'll write that as a fraction so you can see what cross cancels, if anything. In this case, 5 goes into 25 5 times, multiplying across gives us 45 plus 32, which makes 77 degrees Fahrenheit, that is. So 25 degrees Celsius equals 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, those are the types of problems you're going to see on the test. Good luck.